All right. Dust it up. Gotcha. All right, testing 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Afternoon. My name is Matt Avery, and I am presenting the 3:30 seminar here at the world famous Muscle Car and Corvette Nationals. I am so excited to be with you all. Got a really exciting discussion today on a very unique group of cars with a lot of significance for a variety of reasons, which we'll go into. So as I said, my name is Matt. I am a full-time automotive journalist. I work full-time for Mecum Auctions. I host and produce the On the Move podcast along with our lead TV commentator, John Cramen. We have a good time talking cars every week and seeing what's new in the world of Mecum along with the auto industry. In addition to that, I also am an author, and the research and data that I'll be diving into today is based off a lot of the research drawn from my newest book. So we'll go into all of that today. So the title of today's presentation is Berger's Supercar, the Dick Harrell Edition. And what we'll be doing is we'll be examining the pinnacle of 4th gen Camaro showroom performance. So in case you stumbled in here, you're not sure what we're talking about, so this coincides with a display that I hosted this year. We have 9 examples of these top tier 4th generation Camaros on display, making their appearance here at McCacken. Now, the gathering of cars, like I said, this is the lineup. It's obviously out here after the seminar. Head back there, take a look, take pictures, come find me, talk to some of the owners. You'll really learn a lot more. Now, the reason why even the display here at McCacken is significant is that this is the largest public display of these Camaros since they were new. And obviously with them being all 2002 model years, we're also coinciding with the 20th anniversary, so it's a very fitting occasion to have the cars. And so we're going to kind of dive deep today into how these cars came to be and how they came to be created and distributed. All right, so now that car you just saw up front is car number 1 of the run. This is the same vehicle taken earlier this summer on site at Berger Chevrolet in Grand Rapids, Michigan. It's a very fitting picture to sum it all up because here you can see just the over-the-top car with Berger's dealership in the background. And if you're unfamiliar with the dealership, we're going to go into that in just a minute. Now, as I mentioned, this information that I'm going into is drawn from my newest book. This is Camaro Special Editions. It will be releasing early next year, and as you can see on the cover, I placed one of these legendary Camaros right front and center. So I've got an infinity for them. They are definitely in the upper echelon of Camaro heritage and history. So if you want to learn more even after this weekend, feel free to get a copy of this book. Like I said, it will detail these cars even in more detail than what I'm going in today. Now, to understand the significance of these cars, we're actually going to go back in time a little bit because there's a certain magic formula that was captured with these cars and how they were built and created and distributed. And there's a lot of parallels between the iconic classic Camaro greats of the 1960s that obviously are here, that are celebrated and enjoyed. There's a lot of overlap between how these cars came to be and these GMMG Dick Harrell cars. So let's examine some of the touch points in particular of the early 427 Yenko Camaros. So here's an example here. Now, if you've seen this piece of marketing literature, you'll notice right away, obviously, this was when the Camaro debuted. Those familiar with that story arc will remember that at the launch, or shortly thereafter, the largest motor that Chevrolet was going to install from the factory was the L78 396 car. They were not going to install a 427 from the factory. That would come later in subsequent years through the COPO program. But in '67, you have this mad dash by dealers all around the country that are rushing to meet the demand for 427 Camaro. So Yenko is at the forefront of that. So this is a piece of literature for his early effort. So the reason I bring it out is there's 3 things I want to call attention to. So at the top, you obviously have, it's the 1967 Yenko sports cars Camaro, so you have the Yenko name there. In fine print here, you will notice it says engineered by Dick Harrell. So already you have a second partner being brought into this effort. And then you actually, at the bottom, you have a third partner in the form of Span Inc. If you're familiar with the Yenko story, you'll know that Span Inc. was a marketing firm based here in Chicago, operated by one of Don Yenko's racing buddies who volunteered to help market the car. So there's a formula here that starts developing all the way back in the 1960s. Presented another way, you have here's laid out in a chart, a little bit more detail. So again, this is for the 1967 Yenko 427 Camaro. You have the program players. These are all the people that are involved in bringing that vehicle to market. It's very difficult from a standpoint of quantity and scale and uniformity to do that on your own, whether you're a single dealer or a speed shop or an upfitter. You need several people to come into play. So first off, you have sales command. Obviously that would be Don Yenko at his dealership in Canonsburg. So what he's doing is he's overseeing the program of the 1967 427 Camaro, moving the ball along, financing it, etc. From there, you have a sales champion, someone that has the marketing eye for the car, right? So as I mentioned, that was Jim Spencer. You could also argue that on site, you would have Donna Mae Mims. Those familiar with Yenko history will know Donna was very instrumental with his marketing, particularly of the Stinger, but she also would have been involved with the Camaro, so she would be the on-site point of contact, with Jim Spencer being the off-site point of contact from a marketing standpoint. So Jim would be in Chicago, Donna would be in Canonsburg at the dealership. Now, of course, having a desire to do something is not enough. You need to get supply, right? So the supply connection would, in this case, would be Vince Piggins. He's Chevrolet Brass. He's the manager of product performance. He's going to be in Detroit, Michigan. So he will be the one allocating vehicles, taking Don's request, helping from a factory standpoint, giving Don support for this kind of backdoor project. And then finally, you have a speed consultant, and in this case, as we saw in that piece of the marketing, Dick Harrell is the one that Don Yenko taps. He actually hires him away from Nicky Chevrolet, who had hired Dick to oversee their 427 Camaro program. Don likes his work so much, he hires him away. So Dick works for both Nicky and Yenko, but in this case, he was involved with 2 of the 427 Camaro programs, but he was called out in the marketing of this one. And again, of course, he's going to be at his Harrell Speed Center in East St. Louis, Missouri, actually upfitting the cars before they would go back to Yenko for sales distribution. Now, some of where you would also see that play out with the paperwork is here. So here you have Harrell Automotive. So this would be the work order that Harrell's team performed for Yenko Chevrolet, convert to 450. That's not the displacement, that's how they marketed the 427. And then you can see there, convert to 450. And then you have the Yenko work order here as well, receiving it from Yenko Chevrolet. You can see that it's car number, this is car number 706, having come from St. Louis with modifications by Harrell. So just where you start to see that, at first glance, you might just see the Yenko Camaro, but there's a lot of people that help to bring that car to market. Now, the reason I bring that up is because a lot of what you saw here happened again in the early 2000s with Berger Chevrolet and GMMG and the work of the Dick Harrell Camaros. So playing out here, so again, now we're fast forwarding, we've got the 2002 Berger Supercar Dick Harrell Edition. Again, walking through this chart, sales command, you have Matt Berger Jr. So Matt is part of obviously the Berger family, and at this time he's still GM of the dealership, he's still actively involved, but he was back in the early 2000s, so he's the general manager. He's going to be the one in Grand Rapids helping to oversee the program, move it forward, finance it, etc. Now for the Berger Supercars, the sales champion in this case is a guy by the name of Dick Jocks. So he's on staff with Berger in Grand Rapids, calling customers, getting interested parties and taking orders, etc. And then of course you have Scott Settlemeyer, a longtime personality with the 4th generation Camaro. He plays a big role in allocating the quantity of vehicles that are needed to help perform not only this Camaro program, but other Camaro programs that happen as well. And then finally, the wild card of this equation, the speed consultant, is a guy by the name of Matt Murphy. So Matt is the owner of GMMG Inc. in Marietta, Georgia. He starts that in 1998. We'll go into his background in just a bit. All right, so now as we kind of fast forward, so now we have a little bit of background. Let's talk a little bit more about the 2 powerhouses here. You've got Berger and you've got GMMG. So Berger is in Grand Rapids, Michigan. They have a long-standing commitment and passion for Chevrolet history and performance. Every summer they do an all GM show where they invite their customers, they invite anyone with a GM product to come celebrate Corvette, Camaro, whatever you have. So these are photos from this year's show. I was able to be there in attendance, and it is clear that they have a passionate fan base and following. It's very exciting to be on site. They're also noteworthy because they are the last remaining muscle car dealer of the 1960s, still in business, and not just in business, but really thriving. It's a very active dealership, and I think a lot of that has to do with their passion for where they've come from. So here's, in the middle you have Matt, on the left is his dad Dale, and then on the right you have Scott Settlemeyer. So this was another Camaro program that they were part of in the early 2000s, but you can see the guys back there as, I think this was a delivery day. Now speaking of Camaro, or Berger's tie to the Camaro, arguably the ultimate, the pinnacle of the first gen Camaro performance would be the Z01, right? The COPO that was ordered in 1969, 50 by Fred Gibb, another 19 later. Now, a lot of people, obviously, you know Fred Gibb having placed the initial order for those 50 cars, but come to find out, Berger got number 3. It's this car here. So again, speaking of one of those things where for a long time, people thought all of those cars were only earmarked for Fred Gibb, how in the world did Berger get a hold of one, and especially car number 3 so early in the run? And so really that comes down to the fact of their proximity to Detroit. They had the ear to the ground, they heard about it, and again, they wanted to be a part of it. They really have always had a long-standing commitment to wanting to be a part of Chevy performance. It's very exciting. One of the other hallmarks of a Berger Camaro in particular, of course, that's become now legendary, it's a sought-after badge of honor, is their badge at the back by Berger. That's something that obviously in the 1960s rolled out. They would carry that through subsequent Camaro programs. So here you can see a trio of Camaros that all were part of Berger's history. You have on the far left, that is a COPO, not the Z01, that's the Iron Block L72 427. Dale Berger, during the 1960s, placed a lot of orders for COPO Chevelles, COPO Camaros, high performance Novas, that kind of stuff. And then here you have another Camaro program that they did with Matt Murphy leading up to the Dick Harrell program. And then you also have a 5th gen Camaro that they did, that they made some modifications. So they really, like I said, I can't stress enough how much they really care, in particular about Camaro history. Speaking a little bit about the fan base and the following, this is Kevin DeWitt. So Kevin is the owner of that trio of Camaros. He bought his COPO from Berger, brand new in 1969. Still has it today. It's been here on display. Very passionate owner, but again, that's typical of the owners that seek out Berger. It is readily common to find owners around the country that will drive or make the distance to come to Michigan to acquire a Camaro from Berger. It matters that much to the community, to the collector car community and the enthusiasts for sure. So just like on the Z01, on the back of their COPO, they also would put their badge. Again, now it's known as a badge of honor. It's a big deal. And so now that's something that they carried over into subsequent Camaro programs. This is the back of that 4th gen Camaro. They continued that, and they still do that today on the 6th gen Camaros that are available. It's no longer a 3-dimensional badge, but it is a graphic that goes on the back. And of course, it obviously goes on the rest of their inventory. But certainly when it comes to Corvettes and Camaros, enthusiasts really get excited after seeing something like this on the back of it. It means a lot. All right, let's transition down to a little bit of history on GMMG. So as I mentioned, it was founded in 1998 by Matt Murphy. This is their property here. So this is an industrial park in Marietta, Georgia. So this is the shop here, and then in the back was storage and inventory. Here you can see the reverse angle of that property. Again, pretty humble origins, lots of space for cars, and they would certainly need it. This is that same view during one of their many open houses that would coincide with other Camaro events, shows, etc., where they also had a passion, like Berger, to invite people in, be a part of what they were doing. Here you can see the back lot, and again, I mentioned that they needed all that space for vehicle storage because there's Scott in the middle with a big smile on his face, having been able to earmark, in this case, dozens and dozens of cars. This was for a Z01 program that they did in 2001. But again, that just shows the importance of someone like Scott on the inside of Chevrolet to be able to get that quantity of vehicles. One of the other things you'll notice about Matt Murphy, it's a little confusing because you have Matt Berger, Matt Murphy, and then now you have Matt Avery, so I understand it's very confusing. But you have they were very clear about labeling and keeping identification. That's obviously a big deal when you're moving lots of inventory. A lot of these Camaros had a set package, but then they also had a lot of options that customers could tack on. So keeping things straight and record keeping was a high priority. Here you can see this is a shot showing a vehicle program they did with Dale Earnhardt in 2001 called the Intimidator SS. But again, just a large quantity of vehicles in various stages of transformation, having gone into the shop, getting the required upfit, and then going back out to the dealership. As part of their massive scaling, you'll notice a brand new fence. Obviously that was built for security. Neat little touch there because Matt Murphy had a big focus on the past. He cared about history, and I know it wasn't intentional, but if you know anything about the Fred Gibbs story, who ordered the 50 ZL1s out in La Harpe, Illinois, if you know that his property had the same problem, he was taking in such high costly inventory that theft was a big deal. So because of that, he had to install a fence on his property. So again, a nice little kind of tie back, just same problem, different era. So, all right, so here's Matt himself. Now, so it was very common underneath the hood of the Camaros that would pass through the GMMG doors, not only the Dick Harrells here, but any of their Camaro programs, as well as some of their Firebird Trans Am programs. You would see a lot of signatures from the crew and people related to whether it be that Camaro program or Camaro programs of the past. So here's what his signature looks like. Matt grew up in the Atlanta area. He spent some time with SLP, where he really, during the mid-90s, where he really kind of understands not only high-performance Camaros, but also, like Don Yenko, there's a lot of parallels. He understands the power of marketing and how to distribute a product. Because I mean, again, anyone can really build a high-performance product, high-performance vehicle, but it takes a certain skill set to get that word out to a large audience base and to scale your efforts. Matt really has that dialed in. All right, so let's talk next about the Dick Harrell program and how it comes about. So in 2002, General Motors put together this one-of-a-kind show vehicle, and it was at display throughout the summer of 2002. One of the places it was on for public viewing was the Woodward Dream Cruise in August in Detroit. So somewhere in that summer and or fall, Matt Murphy and Matt Berger talk about this car. The idea surfaces of what if we built a run of these radical wide-body Camaros. So obviously General Motors built this like many of the automakers. They built a one-off show car with no plans for scaling to get enthusiasts excited. Matt said, hey, let's make the rubber meet the road. Let's actually offer this to customers. A couple more promotional shots that they would have, or that GM would have used just to capture the vehicle. No sense of scaling. Underneath the hood, a radical powertrain upgrade. You can see upgraded wheels and tires, and then inside, just a you can see it's meant for racing with the roll cage and basically a stripped down interior. So with an idea in mind, with the concept kind of the ball in motion, the next step was, so how are we going to actually market this vehicle? You know, we can't just call it the wide body that was on display at the Woodward Dream Cruise. That's where the idea surfaces to integrate Dick Harrell by calling it the Dick Harrell Edition. So to understand a little bit about Dick Harrell, here you can see him on the far left-hand side. This would be his performance shop in Kansas City. This is a magazine from Superstock of July of '68. They summed it up pretty well as they did an expose on his efforts. They defined him as the man who perfected the little car, big engine concept for Chevrolet, has found the combination for ultra high performance. So the reason why they labeled it as little car, big engine, again, because when Camaro debuts, Chevrolet was not putting in the 427. Dick Harrell is really the one who pioneers those efforts, first with Nicky, then with Yenko. That's really where his talents excelled. So again, so it was a very fitting tribute to want to call this wide body a Dick Harrell edition. Here you can see another angle of Dick's shop, and at this point, this was around late 1968. This is the Dick Harrell Performance Center. He was campaigning race cars as well. This was also the housing for where he would base his operations out of. In addition to, after learning the ropes with Nicky and Yenko, he decides, I'm gonna do my own conversions. I don't need that dealer partner, so he also offers 427 conversions. All of that would have been done here up until his death in the early 1970s from a drag racing incident. So I've had the chance to go out there. For me as a journalist, firsthand research is always important. So 2 years ago I went out there just to see the facility. It is still there in the red. So obviously this facade here behind me would have been the building where his team was. So it's neat that the building's still standing. So, all right, so let's move a little bit more. So here is, now we have kind of how the vehicle came about. So now as we kind of move the project along, so here's a final example. This is car number 23. This is on display here at McCacken. This is also another very appropriate photo that sums up the effort, because here you have one of the 4th gen Dick Harrells that harkens back to Dick Harrell from the 1960s at Berger, with one of Dick's Ram trucks and one of his flip-up drag cars behind it. So really it sums it up pretty well with all the different parts connected to this vehicle. So the next phase that Matt take is they start getting some renders. So they connect with a graphic designer out west by the name of Chris Horton. So in 2004, he comes up with some mock-ups showing what a street version of that blue Woodward Dream Cruise show car could look like. A couple different variants, different colors. It's a little hard to tell here, but you can see actually they even tried some different wheel designs. But in general, you can see all the major components are here from the standpoint of, you have the redevised hood, the extended body panels, and then you have the high back spoiler. So it's all kind of there and really helped to give clarity for the project, as well as it also allowed some early marketing to happen while the car was being fleshed out. So that would have happened in the winter of 2004. What happened is one of the GMMG employees, one of their used Camaros was sourced as a clay car, where it would have been taken up to Detroit, and they're at one of the many one of the many auto suppliers there. They went through the actual fitting of putting on the clay so that they could pull the molds off to scale the program. So here you can see that there on the left is Matt there. On the right is Dennis. Dennis is in the crowd today. We have a lot of people connected with the car, so pretty neat. And then we start to see, like I said, some of the clay being put on the car to help kind of be able to pull molds off of it, because the goal was always to scale, to have significant quantity. You can see here the spoiler, also the mock-up for that, and then just another call out, you can see the Georgia plate. Like I said, this was a car sourced locally in Georgia, brought up as kind of the test mule, the pilot car, if you were. More of the clay work on the car. Profile, also with again, the front, the widened front and rear quarter panels, the hallmark of the Dick Harrell edition. So this car here, again, colloquially referred to as the clay car. This is how it sits today. So it recently surfaced at a Mecum auction, and it changed hands. And so again, so it then, from that clay phase, it then later on received the wide body panels. But again, it was always kind of designed to be the car that would help to mock everything up, but later was kind of given the wide body treatment. All right, so you can see here, now this would be not necessarily the clay car, but this would be as the body technicians in the Marietta, Georgia area started to convert these large quantities of cars. So as you can see, just the body work that went into giving them the radical look. You can see here the fenders and the spoiler at the bottom. Cars in primer and undergoing the transformation. One of the things to note is that, if you remember the photo of GMMG, is that inside, originally, they were not equipped with a body shop. They were more of a performance tuner, so they actually relied on several area body shops and technicians in the Marietta, Georgia to perform all the body work. So as the car started to get completed, here you can see them parked outside of the GMMG facility. Over here behind the pickup truck, this would be the front facade of the building, and then you can see the cars here having received their widened body. It might be a little tough here, but you can see the red door panel, and then of course with the black body panels added on. One of the interesting elements about these cars is that from the get-go, the idea was to have all of the added body work be carbon fiber, which would have been extremely radical. Again, we're talking 15, 20 years ago. That was kind of the concept. And then from a delay standpoint, from a cost standpoint, what ended up happening was only the outer hood skin and the gas filler door ended up being carbon fiber. Because I mentioned it's only the outer hood skin because it's not entirely new hood. What GMMG did was they removed the factory outer skin, and then they grafted on. I've got a picture later on, but only the outer skin is carbon fiber, but it is evident when you pop the hoods on these cars. The other thing is these cars would have received a new front fascia, but you can see already this one is undergoing the transformation with the hood, and then of course you got it labeled here. This is Dick Harrell number 18. This car, I'm very excited to say, is also on display here at McCacken, so if you want to see it up close, it is here. Now I mentioned that Matt Murphy relied on not just his own technicians, but other automotive specialists to help get these cars done. One of them is Chris Lee, who I had the chance to connect with just a couple weeks ago. So here he and I are. He's still rocking a GMMG hat all these years later. He's so thrilled to be a part of these cars just because of how legendary they turned out. But you can see him here back in the day. Again, he would have signed a lot of these cars. I've got a close-up here. So here is a car that he painted. So over here you can see Matt Murphy's signature. You can see here painted Chris Lee Hollifield. So just kind of neat being able to connect with these people that were here that helped bring these cars to life. There's Matt Murphy's. All right, so here we go. This is in the shop. So once the cars would have received their body work, obviously the next step would then is to be outfitted with the powertrain upgrades. These cars were not just cosmetic additions, they had serious performance upgrades. So this would have been in the GMMG shop. And one of the things that stands out here is that obviously you have two cars have been through the paint and body. They're starting to get the engine conversions. But stacked here on the wall, those boxes all contain C5R race motors, which would have been an option on these cars. So just showing the scale and quantity that Matt was dealing with. So here you can see the engine in subframe pulled out. And then of course the same level of detail to the interior. They also received significant changes and in the form of a variety of different parts content and swapping. Now as we start to kind of see final products, this would have been this is a car back at Berger in the mid 2000s. All the cars, like I mentioned, all 30 of the production run of coupes and T-tops would have been sold through the dealership off the showroom floor. Really radical opportunity for customers to have. You can see the back of it on display. Now this would have been an open house at GMMG. Again, Matt was very quick to always want to invite enthusiasts out to hangouts, talk cars, and to see what they were up to. So here's another one of the Dick Harrells on display. You can see two more tucked in there. And then you can see on the lift, a couple cars covered up for owner deliveries that would have been happening that day. One of the other hallmarks about these cars in particular is the satin black painted tail panel. That's a callback, as Camaro enthusiasts will know, to the big block Camaros of the 1960s. That was something that Matt wanted to do on his Camaros and Berger wanted to do with their cars, just as, again, another subtle nod to the Camaro history and heritage. There's another photo of it, and then of course you can see you've got the by Berger badge there along with the GMMG badge. Okay. Now this is a custom painted, this is one of what's referred to as one of the prototypes. There's 3 prototypes. This one in particular is noteworthy as it's the original owner was Valerie Harrell, that's Dick's daughter. So she was part of the program, and so this car went to her. This car was actually painted out in California by one of Dick Harrell's painters. So a little bit of heritage there, whereas the rest of the run would have been painted in the Georgia area. This one was actually sent out to California just to have that tie-in with Dick's legacy. A couple other things stand out on it, a little bit different. Again, because of its kind of early conception, you can see that the hood is a little bit different, the treatment there. And then also it's got a kink in the stripe. And another subtle nod is that corner panel is painted. It doesn't really make a difference, it just kind of shows the nuance between the cars. Now, of course, building the car is one thing, marketing the car is another. So that would have been Dick's job, or Dick Jock's. And so this is a brochure that was put together by Berger, just advertising the opportunity to own a piece of automotive history. You can see at the bottom, Berger Chevrolet, getting people interested to come buy one of these radical Camaros. Here's the inside of that. You can see here's the parts content of everything that would have been changed, both performance and cosmetic on these vehicles. So it was pretty intense. And then you can see at the bottom, for more information, contact Dick directly. So again, that's starting to kind of really tap into what makes these cars so significant. Because again, having and building a radical Camaro show car is one thing, but to actually try to distribute it through dealer channels puts it in a very another level of attempt. It's a very ambitious operation to do, and the fact that Matt were able to pull it off is really astounding. So here would have been some additional marketing for the vehicle. You can see the date, 2004, F-Body Gathering in Atlanta. That obviously worked well for Matt Murphy being in Marietta. You can see here, this would have been, there's Valerie on the far left, and then down the row you have a lot of people who are connected with Dick Harrell that were there on site signing these vehicles. So if you look at the production run of the 30 cars, the key element to look for are signatures from these individuals. That was kind of the final stamp of approval for this run of vehicles. So kind of a neat celebration and kickoff for the program. You can see the same vehicle here. This is pulled from GMMG's website from 2006. You can see this is the 2006 show schedule. So one of the things that you'll start to identify is that time is not on their side. Because again, if the clay car, as it were, if that starts getting mocked up in 2004, you're already 2 years out from the end of the 4th generation Camaro in 2002. So that's where the sand starts to run out fast from the timetable of actually getting these vehicles in a timely manner. Now from a documentation standpoint, each of these vehicles, each of these Berger supercars should have 3 stickers: a first sticker, second sticker, third sticker. So the first sticker would be obviously the one from Chevrolet designating the factory package contents, right? We've all seen these. The key element to note is that you want to see at the bottom, the delivery dealer would be Berger. You want to look for that. From there, the second vehicle sticker would be the GMMG package sticker, or the Dick Harrell package content sticker. So this would be a full sheet that each vehicle would also get. This would identify, again, the dealer name. All of them would be Berger. It would identify the vehicle number. In this case, it's Dick Harrell number 8. And then, of course, this would be the standard Berger supercar package, and then the price. So you can identify already that here, just in the base Dick Harrell form, it's already ringing up at $87,000. And then on top of that, many owners, I call that out there, many owners went one step further to really make their Camaro the ultimate Camaro. GMMG and Matt Berger were happy to oblige by offering different additional performance upgrades. So this would be considered the third vehicle sticker here. It would be a half sheet, and then you can see everything from upgraded engine packages. Here you can see a phase 3 to a 600 horsepower package, 630 horsepower package was available. You've got line locks, a roll cage, all kinds of stuff, whatever the customer wanted. And then of course, reflecting that is the price. Most of these Camaros were well into the 6 figures. And again, we're talking mid-2000s, even late 2000s of when these cars started to get done. So again, it was a very ambitious effort, and yet still 30 cars were completed. So you can call out on the price. All right, so as we move up, I realize I'm running a little bit out behind schedule. So we have the wide body here, you got the panels, you got the additional hood. Underneath, you can see, I mentioned the skin, you've got the carbon fiber viewed through it. You've got this is the gas door with the carbon fiber inside. From a profile standpoint, you can see the panels. I encourage you, also we have 9 on display. If you want to see these up close, there's lots of examples to look at. Fixed seat wheels with the Corvette Z06 brakes. From the back, all the additional body panels. Chambered exhaust was also another hallmark. I mentioned the phase 1, so that would be the stock LS1 tweaked to deliver 400 horsepower. From there, you could go up to a phase 3X that has 630 horsepower, to a phase 5. We actually have the phase 5 on display with 650 horsepower, so I encourage you to take a look at that. All these cars were stamped with all kinds of additional pieces of information. All the cars were labeled with their numbers. Inside, you've got the embroidery on the seats, the roll cage. Gauge cluster was different, the insert. All of them received a brass door tag. And I mentioned some of the other upgrades would be things like exhaust cutouts that would be operated from the convertible top switch. None of the production one was convertible, so Matt would utilize that switch to control that. Inside there, you had the Hirsch line lock if the car was equipped with it. And then they would have received a car cover. And then finally, so here's what ended up from a production standpoint. As I mentioned, there's 30 production signed cars. There's the clay car, there's 3 prototypes, and then a single convertible for a total of 35 cars related to the Berger Supercar Dick Harrell edition. So the other unique thing about our display here is that we have 2 very distinct pairs. As I mentioned, we have a Phase 5. That is part of the Sunset Orange Metallic Twins. There's 2 cars, 4 and 15. They're on display. They were the only 2 painted that color. The other pair that we have are the historic bookends, as I call them, car number 1 and car number 30. So they're also on display. Really just a nice capstone just to indicate that this ambitious effort was undertaken and succeeded. It did fall behind schedule. The last car was delivered somewhere around 2010. That customer is probably very eager to get that car. But again, one of the most significant pieces of Camaro history, certainly from a 4th gen standpoint, but I would argue even of all 6 generations. So I encourage you, if you want to learn more, come find me. I'll be back by the display with the cars. I also have a book coming. And other than that, I really thank you for attending. Enjoy the rest of the weekend here at McCacken.